I'd like to very warmly welcome my 6 eminent panelists, the contributors today, and the investors across the world who are joining us via this webinar. I feel like one of those newbies some years ago in the early days of technology, when we shouted into the handsets, "Can you hear me?" And an entire conversation would be spent with, "Can you hear me?" But nonetheless, I'm really delighted to have with me an absolutely fantastic panel. Eugene Williamson from Pepsico, Busi Mabuza from the Industrial Development Corporation and the BRICS Business Council, Andrew Kirby from Toyota, Ramatsemela Masango from Ario Genex, Haroon Kalla from AMKA, and Wamkele Mene from the African Continental Free Trade Area. Our topic today is manufacturing, localization, and the opportunities across the African continent. My job in the next hour is mainly to facilitate a conversation with you, my eminent panelists. And we've brought together 2 global companies operating in South Africa and elsewhere in the world, 2 South African companies, one emerging and one beginning to become established and operating across the continent, and 2 persons in the interface between public policy and action, one in a development finance institution and the other one in trade policy. So before I really turn to my panelists, I want to contextualize our panel by sharing with you, of all things, a few numbers. So let me begin with a stark statistic which represents opportunity. Africa, this home of humanity, accounts for 17% of the world's population, but 3% of GDP and 2% of manufacturing output. And therein, I believe, lies an enormous opportunity. We will begin trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area in the new year, and 54 countries have already signed the agreement and 30 have ratified the agreement. We have 1.2 billion people, one of the youngest populations in the world, with a GDP estimated of in excess of $2.5 trillion US. And here's an interesting statistic. The rest of Africa, excluding South Africa, imported, call it about 7 trillion rands worth of goods last year. And 6 trillion of that was imported from outside the continent. So the lowering of the barriers of entry represents an enormous opportunity. The World Bank estimates that annual African GDP can rise by $450 billion US over a period of time if we get this free trade area working well. I have with me also some eminent representatives of South African manufacturing. South Africa is a manufacturing center on the continent. We have strong capabilities in a number of sectors. Last year, for example, we produced a record 632,000 vehicles sold across the world. We're now the world's 2nd largest citrus exporter. And I can give you a number of indicators of opportunity and pockets of excellence. Given that we have a manufacturing base, albeit we need to do more, given that the market opportunities are so enormous, this is a young, urbanizing continent. I really would like my panelists to share with us today and with those who are following the webinar, your insights, experience, and where you see the opportunities. So my first contributor is Eugene Williamson. And Eugene is PepsiCo CEO for Africa, for the Middle East, and for South Asia. And Eugene and I had sat across the table in Cape Town over many an afternoon, negotiating the terms of PepsiCo's acquisition of a major South African operation that would enable PepsiCo to have something of the order, I think, Eugene, of about 10,000 workers in South Africa, making it an absolutely significant player in our economy and in manufacturing. So, Eugene, let perhaps ask you to start the conversation with your reflections. The Pioneer Foods acquisition was one of the largest acquisitions that PepsiCo has made outside the United States in the last decade. What did you see as the opportunities in South Africa? And what did you see as the opportunities on the African continent? What made your shareholders commit to a significant sum of money you put on the table to enable this deal? Over to you, Eugene.
Thank you, Minister. And first of all, thanks for the opportunity to join you and the rest of the panel today. If you look at the African continent, everything that you said in your introduction is absolutely true, and clearly is also the opportunity that we see for Africa. It is a continent with a large and growing population, young population, but also a continent that still has tremendous opportunities for development. And as we looked at the continent, we obviously looked at what are the opportunities for us to further scale up our business presence in the continent. And as probably some of you know, we have already an operation in South Africa since 1999 with the Simba business, a business that we're extremely proud of, but we are looking to really expand that business and create one of the leading food and beverage companies across Africa. We then entered into discussions with Pioneer Foods, which we believe is a phenomenal company that complements our existing portfolio. It also gives us a great footprint in what is one of the most developed markets in Africa. We see South Africa in that context also as a hub for us and as the gateway to really build a scale business in sub-Saharan Africa. With Pioneer Foods, we get access to roughly 45 manufacturing sites in South Africa. We get access to an agricultural value chain that we think we can further develop and enhance. And we've had some good discussions also with the minister in terms of what we can bring to the party to really help develop agriculture in South Africa further with the capabilities that PepsiCo can bring to the party. But also, we believe that with that Pioneer footprint, we can create a much stronger company in South Africa, and then from there on build out our business across a couple of other sub-Saharan African markets. We're now roughly 8 months into the acquisition. So we concluded the acquisition in I believe it was end of February that we had the final discussions also with the competition tribunal. So we're now 8 months down the line, and I must say that we're extremely pleased with, first of all, the talent that came into our organization. It's a phenomenal group of people, highly talented, and a group of people that we believe can really create a lot of value for PepsiCo, but also that can create value for South Africa. And we are extremely committed, based on also the discussions we had with the minister, to do our part to help develop South Africa, but also to leverage this acquisition as a stepping stone to really put South Africa even further on the map as the #1 food processing country in the African continent. And I think there's a couple of levers that we will pull. First of all, the agricultural footprint that I alluded to before. Second is the manufacturing footprint that we have in South Africa. But then also we're looking to deploy the development fund that we committed to as part of the acquisition to help set up an agricultural ecosystem in South Africa that ultimately has the objective to create a much bigger impact by creating an ecosystem that consists of academia, the food processing industry, a vibrant startup community, but also the government would be part of that, with the objective to really build out agriculture and food processing as a competitive advantage for South Africa. I firmly believe we can do that. Obviously, we are going to be just one party in that whole ecosystem. We're going to be a very committed party, but we will need other parties to come on board. And later in this panel discussion, I can give some more details, but I'd like to hand back now to the minister and give the opportunity to some of the other panelists. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Eugene. So that represents the view of a global company looking at our continent. Andrew, like Eugene, you're in a global company. You're in Toyota. It's made a 2.4 billion rand commitment at last year's investment conference. And though you are based in South Africa, your operation is really very export directed. A significant part of your vehicles go to other parts of the world. Do you see an opportunity elsewhere on the African continent? What do you think we should be doing in vehicle manufacturing that can transform Africa not only as a consumer of vehicles, but a new powerhouse for car making in the world?
Oh, thank you, Minister, and thank you for the invitation to join this panel. I think, as Toyota, we've looked at Africa as a big opportunity for the future. As was mentioned earlier, we have a population that's growing, young population, strong infrastructure growth, and obviously a huge need for mobility and personal mobility as well. Public transport systems within South Africa and the rest of Africa are not that strong, so there's a huge opportunity for personal mobility. So I think the opportunities are really on two fronts. The one is to deepen the level of manufacturing value addition. And we've been focusing on this for a while, but we know that there are significant opportunities to grow that. And we are very much part of a global supply chain. So even when we are only supplying local market, we need to prove that we are globally competitive. So that's always a challenge for us, is to continue to show that we are globally competitive. And why should that not be the case for our customers in the rest of Africa as well? We can't assume that what they require is any different to other markets around the world. So I think the big opportunities, Minister, are around finding a way in which we can share that value chain across the different countries in Africa. Of course, not everybody can be a full manufacturer. Not everybody can produce the exact vehicles we produce. That would just be diluting our levels of competitiveness and undermining the scale that we have. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to share that value chain and find ways in which we can support the growth of service parts, component manufacturers, or component manufacturers that could supply us in South Africa, and then we could supply the vehicle back to them. At the end of the day, there must be a value. There must be a win-win between the customers in those countries and obviously the customers here in South Africa as well. So I think the opportunities are very much on the manufacturing side, and then on the other side is the product and the motorization, the mobility opportunities, because the mobility is a catalyst for growth. It's a catalyst for economic development, and at the same time provides a really good opportunity to bring advanced manufacturing skills. And that whole value chain, I think, is always a good opportunity to grow industrialization in countries. And we working and thinking very hard about how we can support the growth of industrializations in other countries in Africa as well as continue to grow our manufacturing hub here in South Africa.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And it's my pleasure next to ask Rami Masango, who is the founder of Aerogenics, to make some remarks. Rami, let me start with the fact that it seems to me in Pennsylvania, the local population could do with some expertise in counting. And you got your PhD in nuclear engineering at Pennsylvania State University in the US in 2008. We may decide to export there for a little while, but in the meantime, can I welcome someone who would have had every opportunity in the United States, but decided to come back to South Africa and, in fact, not only come back, but look at the country and say, what is some of the toughest parts of the economy to get into? And that is manufacturing. And she's done a startup, and she's now producing a significant and important products, which we'll be hearing about a little while later, the inverters, the rectifiers, and the soft starters that you want to sell in the renewable energy space. I want to ask you, though, much as I'm curious, Rami, what made you come back and go into... But my question to you is, partnerships between the private sector and government is essential. Have you found that government has been a good partner? But also share with me some problems, some challenges. Where are we dropping the ball as government? What could we do differently? What works? So we only learn when we know what's not working. Over to you, Rami.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this panel. A very good afternoon to my fellow panelists and attendees of this session. Yeah, Honorable Minister, I don't think I would have been able to assist with the Pennsylvania problem, but it was really a strategic decision for me to return home after I completed my studies, and I'm glad I did that, because I think South Africa needs all of us to build it, to turn the situation around. We're always complaining about the economy, but I think we all need to dig in and do our bit. So Aerogenics is a 51% Black women-owned organization. We have been in business since 2010. Initially, the company really started the business as a consulting company. Our track record is really a project integrator. We've done work in the energy space, in the defense space, in aerospace, and in the mining sector. So we started purely as a consulting business. But I think it must have been about 4 years ago when we made a strategic decision that we need to actually diversify our business. Just relying on consulting was not sufficient. We needed to get into product development. We needed to get into manufacturing. And I must say, what others saw as a challenge in the energy landscape, some of us saw that as an opportunity, and we really just got into this energy challenge. And we took up the opportunity then to develop a range of products, like I said, in the energy space, in the telco space. And we've developed inverters, rectifiers, and soft starters, as you have already alluded to, Mr. Minister. So initially, we were able to use the retained earnings in the business to carry out the development work. But as it could be expected, we ran out of cash along the way when we had to continue with the development of the product and also to prepare for commercialization. But we are truly grateful that the IDC came into the picture. The IDC actually provided funding for us. And I think this is one of the examples, Minister, where we believe government can actually come in. We really believed in our products. We believed we could really make a difference. But when there is no money, even great ideas actually die. And IDC came through for us, and IDC supported us in terms of the commercialization of our inverters, rectifiers, and the soft starters. And really through the funding, we've been able to go through product qualification. We've obtained a product certification, and we've completed value engineering of our products. And I must say, in the process, we managed to actually establish a very strong relationship with Mitsubishi Electric Europe, and we were accepted as a Mitsubishi factory partner. So essentially, Mitsubishi is marketing our products. They're marketing our soft starters currently, and they're doing so in many countries in Europe, in Asia, and so on. And they are really our distribution channel. We're looking further into concluding similar agreements also for the inverters and the rectifiers. So basically, we believe we have a very good product line, and I think that's why the likes of Mitsubishi are saying, look, we can do business. Our next phase, Minister, is to industrialize our products. We have a small manufacturing facility here in Centurion, in Pretoria, but we need to now industrialize. We need to produce our products commercially. Here in South Africa, we believe we need to set up a manufacturing facility here in our country. We can really be part of turning the situation around in terms of unemployment and so on and so forth. And we can talk about that in a little while. But we need our products to be able to compete with imported products. We're not asking for favors, but we're saying we need to have high quality, superior products that can actually compete with products that come from outside of the country. So from a developmental perspective, we believe we'll create employment opportunities when we industrialize, when we manufacture, and really we can even export into the entire continent of Africa and beyond. But I must emphasize, Honorable Minister, that it is through the support of government and government entities that organizations like ours can actually move beyond, a small office of trying things out. We can't do it on our own. I think the playing field is not even. The challenges are there. Funding is the most critical. But I do believe, Minister, that I think we have sufficient policies to support, upcoming manufacturers like ours. But it's probably in the implementation where we are probably still struggling. Just as an example, yes, we were able to get IDC funding, but I can tell you, for my partner and I, Dr. Louis Haynes, we are two engineers, and we realized very quickly that we wouldn't be able to package the storyline that the funders want to see and the funders want to hear. So we believe so much in what we do, but how do we communicate to potential funders out there? And I think that's where most of the upcoming manufacturers are probably finding themselves. The idea is there, the idea is great, but how do we actually move forward? You need funding. How do you get funding? You need other people to support you, but then also to bring those people in, you need money to be able to find those people. So sometimes we find ourselves in a chicken and egg situation. You need money to bring people in, but you need those very people to help you bring the money in the organization so that you can move forward. But I think there are quite a few examples where really government is assisting, but there is more to do still. I think for entities like ours, we would really, really need government to also come in and believe in our product and give us opportunities. It's not always ideal that only the big brands or the big companies are given these big projects to run. I think we all have to start somewhere. For a big company to become a big name that it is, it started somewhere. And I would want to believe that it was through government enabling the environment for entities like that to actually grow to be international conglomerates. We need that little bit of support so that we can then play in this space, Honorable Minister. Maybe let me end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rami. You spoke about the enabling environment, and I'm going to invite Haroon Kalla to be our next contributor. And Haroon is not only a key leader in AMKA, which is a large South African cosmetics manufacturer, but he also serves on the board of the Manufacturing Circle, which is a network bringing together people who love making widgets and things. And Haroon, in your case, you came from a small company, you grew over time, and I'm told that today you export to something like 48 other African countries. What's flying off the shelves? What are people looking for? Where's the market opportunities? And what experience have you had? Give us a little bit of that insight, Haroon.
Minister, firstly, let me just say thank you to you for inviting us to this panel. And of course, good afternoon to you and the panelists. I know it's been a long day, so I'll keep my remarks short, but there's a lot to say. And the question you ask is a big one because the journey is 63 years now when we started in South Africa under very difficult conditions, as you know. We are very blessed in that, our belief system is always And I read somewhere recently when the COVID crisis hit our country and the economy, and we said to our team that never waste a crisis. And for us, in adversity, there's opportunity. So on a more general note, Minister, I'm very excited to see that Pepsico has made such a good investment into South Africa, Toyota as well. And I'm sure you know about some of the big investments that are going to be announced tomorrow. So it's exciting to see that people believe in South Africa, but also the African story is also very interesting. The fact is, Minister, that if we represent 17% of the world's population, and we are only representing 3% of the world's GDP and only manufacturing 2% of manufacturing in our economies, there's a multiplier effect of somebody investing their money in Africa and getting a 6 times return, because that's really the opportunity that we see long term. It's not sustainable what we're doing at the moment. I mean, we can't be importing $330 billion worth of products, simple things like machines, that there's no genius behind machines. The important thing, what excites me about the African continental free trade agreement is that it can bring scale and efficiency and competitiveness to the African continent. So that's exciting. What's also interesting to note that between African countries, we are only exchanging about 17% of our trade, whereas in European countries, between the countries themselves, which represents about a 350 million base, they're doing about 69% of inter-country trade. Similarly, in Asia, the inter-country trade is sitting around the 50% mark. So we have a long way to go, but I think that the free trade agreement is going to open up lots of doors, and I think that in this adversity, we've got tremendous opportunity that we can take. From our point of view, Minister, as a company, we're a family-owned company, as you know. We're entrepreneurially driven, but many years ago, we were a sales-driven company. We've transformed our whole business into becoming a marketing-driven company, professionally run. So majority of the businesses are not run by family members any longer. We're involved in the strategy of the business, but we have professionals running each of our divisions, and we have a very active export trade. And as you know, we pioneered almost 35 years ago into our neighbors like Botswana and Swaziland. And then, of course, we're very blessed that when the post-apartheid dispensation came along, Africa became an area that we could trade in very easily. We export to 48 countries in Africa. We're blessed. We're also very fortunate. And what I would like to say is South Africa has got the ability to make high-quality products at competitive prices and export to countries even like Europe, which we export to. So beyond Africa, we export to another about 17 countries, including the US, Europe, and in there Portugal, and so many countries in Europe. We're up to Haiti. Through the USA, we export. We send goods to USA. It arrives in Haiti. So those are the kind of opportunities we've leveraged. But the key, Minister, for us has always been that we've never said no to any opportunity. We've always went back to the drawing board and see how we can tackle a particular market. We've now, from Africa, we believe that we can start exporting. And what we've done, we've taken our products to a higher value chain, where these markets can be sold in many as global products. So we've been excited, and also on another note, I'd like to thank the IDC, in particular DTI, also for supporting us. We would not been what we are had it not been for the support we've received for the last 30 years from IDC, when we needed a small loan just to put up a small factory, and then of course the support has become invaluable to us to be able to exploit. In the last 20 years, be able to exploit and export to 40 plus countries. Recently, the IDC has also extended us through the DTI loans for producing masks, for producing wet wipes. We've just got the machinery coming. And of course, we're also going into we've just entered a consortium where we're trying to replace imports. For example, for the AIDS tender for condoms, we're trying to replace imports of that. And we've just finalized a transaction today. In fact, just fortuitously, we're discussing it to ensure that we make produce this so we can stop or prevent importation of something like 1 billion condoms just for South Africa alone. And we hope that this will lead to us exporting to the rest of Africa. But I think I would want to concur here with Andrew that we have to be benevolent, because alone as South Africa, we're not going to be able to develop the scale that we require. We have a 1.2 billion market. As you very rightly said, it's about a $3 trillion economy. So we can take advantage. We can just increase. Can you imagine the increase just from 17% intra-continental trade to maybe double that over the next 10 years? We're talking about massive sums of opportunities and growth. So on a more, our business, we have been very blessed that we found ourselves. I suppose the secret is giving value for money, but also understanding your consumer. And we always say the customer is the boss. My father used to always tell us that the customer is the boss. If he says the sun rises from the west, you must say yes and listen to him and make sure you keep him happy. Because once you keep him happy, people vote with their feet and they buy our products. And that's what we've done. Good value for money. And South Africa honestly provides a very good platform to trade in the rest of Africa. But we're looking forward to this free trade agreement. I think it can explode businesses all over Africa. So we're excited. And thank you very much once again for giving us the support in getting to the mask business and the wet wipe business, which really are going to become a lot of that sort of products are going to be traveling right across Africa, God willing.
Thank you very much, Haroon. And you and many others have spoken now about the importance of African trade, that intra-regional trade is low, the opportunity is huge, there are barriers. The critical barrier, not the only one, but one of them has been tariff protection that has inhibited the flow of goods. And so we are, I think, particularly pleased to welcome Wamkele Mene, who is the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat that has just set up office in Ghana. And Wamkele, before that, was a lead negotiator in putting together the Continental Free Trade Area. He's seen it from both sides, the architect and now the implementer. Wamkele, everybody here in the room, without exception, have high hopes for the Continental Free Trade Area. Where are we with the process? What needs to be done? And are you optimistic that this can be transformative for our futures on the continent? Over to you, Wamkele.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for the invitation. And I want to thank also the fellow panelists for their comments. I absolutely share the optimism and the enthusiasm that I have just heard today about Africa's prospects. In fact, just to pick up on some of the statistics that you mentioned in your opening remarks, in 15 years' time, the projections by the World Bank are that Africa's combined GDP, consumer spending, and business spending will be close to $7 trillion. That is a significant market, potentially really transformative if we get a number of things right. And some of the panelists mentioned them. And I believe the first step, we have already taken it, because the heads of states of the African Union said to us, we have big problems, we have big challenges on the continent. We have market fragmentation. We have tariff barriers. We have non-tariff barriers. We have smallness of national economies. And then more importantly, which is a big challenge, we have a very, very shallow manufacturing capacity, a very, very shallow productive capacity, with the exception of a few countries on the African continent. And so the challenge is, how do we overcome all of these what appear to be surmountable barriers, these barriers which tend to keep us in this colonial economic model where we continue to export primary commodities primarily to Europe, no value addition. We export amongst ourselves as African countries, apples for apples, and so on. And we believe that this African continental free trade area has the potential to change all of that. We have a very, very clear timeline for reducing tariff barriers. In 15 years, over 90% of Africa's products will be at zero tariffs. We have also introduced a mechanism for targeting non-tariff barriers, which also equally constrain investment. They equally constrain intra-Africa trade. And so these twin factors, the tariff, the relatively high tariffs on the African continent, and the existence of non-tariff barriers, if we can reduce and eliminate those, then we create the space for enhanced investment to take place. And so we have to complement these two factors with a very, very robust made in Africa strategy. And in this regard, when you look at the rules of origin that are currently being negotiated, local content requirements, relative to other regions of the world, relative to other free trade agreements, the value addition that is required in order for us to say this is a made in the AfCFTA product, the value addition is relatively high. Because we look at rules of origin as an instrument to foster industrial development on the African continent. We look at rules of origin. Yes, they help with the prevention of transshipment and other problems. But for the most part, we have to look at rules of origin as an instrument that fosters industrial development on the African continent, that enables Africa to do the things that Andrew from Toyota was talking about, that we are able at some point to manufacture components across the African continent based on value chains that we will all agree to between the investors, the private sector, and the governments, and of course, certainly as the Secretariat as well. So we have a very unique window of opportunity to significantly advance Africa's industrial development objectives. And I'm very encouraged because today, as you mentioned, Minister, we have 30 countries that have ratified the agreement. Out of 55 countries, 54 have signed it. I don't think we've quite seen this level of political commitment, legal commitment in the past on the African continent. There's a singular determination to make this work. And I think that it is very, very, Africa today is well positioned as opposed to Africa 20, 30 years ago, very much well positioned to create the conditions by having a single set of rules for trade and investment, technical barriers to trade, well positioned to make a value proposition to investors. So that investors, when they invest in one market on the African continent, whether it is East or West Africa, they know that they have certainty of market, they have predictability of market, They know the tariff schedule, the tariffs that apply, the duties that apply to them uniformly across the African continent. They know the standards that apply to them across the African continent. They also know that if there's a dispute, there is a dispute settlement mechanism that will be credible, that will resolve these disputes in an impartial manner. And all of these factors put together, I think, should create a very high degree of confidence amongst investors that Africa is very serious about industrial development, is very serious about value addition, and is very serious about improving productive capacity. Yes, there will be challenges. There will be very, very daunting challenges. It may seem insurmountable. There will be challenges around customs procedures. There will continue to be goods that will be stuck at borders and not transit in accordance with the timelines that we have agreed to. But we will have to tackle all of these challenges as we implement the agreement from the 1st of January 2021. As I speak to you today, Minister, the heads of customs authorities of Africa are meeting here in Accra. After our session here, I will go back to them. And we are meeting to get ourselves ready for implementation of this agreement from the 1st of January 2021, so that we all implement and apply the rules for transit, for trade facilitation that we have agreed to in the agreement. So I am optimistic about the capacity for Africa to implement this agreement. Not everybody is going to be able to do it at the same time. We recognize that. There's no trade agreement where all the parties implement it at the same time on day one, but we have the political commitment. We have the determination to confront the challenges, whether it is on the border, investment related, tariffs. We have now a clear set of rules to address all of these challenges. And my job is to make sure that I work with individual countries and regional economic communities to make sure that we implement the obligations that all of us undertook, so that we significantly advance industrial development on the African continent. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Wamkele, and much rests on your shoulders, and good luck for the Council of Trade Ministers that will be meeting later this week. Quite a key meeting. Now, we had that wonderful moment where we are able to get some questions from the audience. Busi Mabuza sent in an apology. She's battling with the technology, but she, I think, is joining. And the first question that I've seen is from Mochehwa More. Eugene, to you. And it says, South African agriculture is not particularly labor intensive. Compared to many of the peer countries, we don't have as many people in agriculture and in the agri value chain. And so a question, Mochehwa's question is, what value chains can we unlock? What do we need to do to be able to turn agriculture and the vast land that we have into a much greater contributor to employment and, I would dare say, industrial output? And let me add a question to that, Eugene. How do you find that technology is reshaping the agricultural value chain, and what should we be learning as South Africa and the rest of the continent in this regard?
Okay, excellent questions. Thank you, Minister. So, first of all, in South Africa, I think there is a massive opportunity to actually integrate emerging farmers into the agricultural value chain. Even though South Africa produces a lot of agricultural crops, it's actually a net importer for many crops, which, to be honest, I found awkward as I was looking at some of the statistics. And you and I spent some time going over different statistics for different crops. And I think there is a real opportunity to significantly increase the output in South Africa for South Africa, and then potentially also leverage some of that output to create value-added propositions that you can then export to other African markets. But let's take wheat as one example. It's roughly 50% of the wheat consumption in South Africa comes from outside South Africa, whereas I think there's an opportunity to significantly increase that. There's many other crops where there's still a net import balance, and we believe that by integrating emerging farmers into our value chain, leveraging some of the special interest commitments that we have made, we can actually start changing that equation. Just an example, in India alone, we work with about roughly 20,000 individual farmers. So we know how to work with individual smallhold farmers. With those smallhold farmers, we've been able also to deploy, I would say, maybe not the same type of agricultural techniques that you can implement with large commercial farmers, but we've been able to implement great irrigation systems, which have enabled them to increase their crop yield